exciting launch today. I'm curious, like, why does Microsoft actually need to have its own end-to-end, pre-trained foundation models, rather than, using all these other ones from OpenAI to, et cetera?
It's a great question. We are obviously one of the largest companies in the world. AI is the future, not of just technology, but of how we're going to transact and do business and, create value in the world over the next many decades. And so this is just of real fundamental importance to who we are as a business. And so we have to be able to have the in-house expertise to create the strongest models in the world. And so that's why we set about this effort little while shortly after we arrived, joined from Inflection about 14, 15 months ago now. And this is what we've been focused on. So it's just a very exciting time to be working.
And it's two models. So you've got MAI1 preview, which is the LLM, is my understanding. And then you've got this voice model as well, which they're two separate models. Is that
That's
is
right.
that how we
Yeah,
should
they're
think of
two
it?
separate models.
Yeah.
I mean, we wanted to train, really, I think what is actually one of the very best voice models in the world is super fluent and very clean, very expressive. I think that what we're very much committed to is making sure that we have optionality. We may use models from third-party developers. We will certainly continue to use OpenAI models for a long time to come, or use open source models as we do already. And I think actually in the future, it's the orchestrator that is going to be a key part of the IP, deciding which model to use when for certain types of queries. So that's the approach that we've taken, 12 to 15 months ago, and that's the path we're on now.
The orchestrator, meaning like it sort of automatically chooses for you based on what the right model is. Is that, yeah.
Yeah, you can think of an orchestrator as really a router deciding which model to hand to which query at which time.
So I think there's a lot of people who will see this news, and I mean, it has been sort of leaked over the over the last year because people are so interested in it, but who will say this is about, Microsoft, distancing itself, or the relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI kind of cooling. Do you see it that way at all? Is the relationship still close?
I mean, our goal is to deepen the partnership and make sure that we, have a great collaboration with OpenAI for many, many years to come. I think it's been really successful so far, and they got a lot out of it, and so have we. I hope that continues. I'm pretty sure it will. So yeah, there's nothing there that concerns me on that front.
So this model, you disclosed that it was trained on 15,000 H100 GPUs, which is, it's interesting to see that disclosure in the first place. A lot of companies kind of hold that close to the vest, but we've seen, some of these are 100,000 H100s, and now we're moving on to the next generation of GPUs. Is it possible to get the same performance with, a small fraction of the GPUs of some of these larger ones?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that what we've demonstrated is that you can actually train on relatively small clusters. I mean, today, a 15K GPU cluster is relatively small compared to what other people are training on. And yet you can get world-class performance. I mean, this is a model that is punching way above its weight and is way up there with some of the best models in the world. And we've really only just started to crank the handle. So, once we get the model into production, start collecting feedback, that process of iteration is going to improve model performance very significantly. So I think that the team's done an incredible job. This is a really, really significant model, and I think it's just the beginning for us.
Yeah, and you say it's up there with it. I mean, are you looking at any particular benchmarks here?
Then we train on all the benchmarks. So, these days models need to be general purpose, especially for text. In time, there will also be text and multimodal. That's the direction of travel because the models learn better if they have more data and more multimodal data as well. So, we're keeping an open mind about what happens next.
Do you think does MAI though, I mean, have as many resources as you would like? Like, is it better to have, Is it still better to have more GPUs? The more, the better.
So we just started training and running tests on GB200s. So I think
Yeah.
we're building a very large GB200 cluster that we'll use for OpenAI, we'll use for MAI, we'll use for our inference partners that we charge to. So, I mean, Microsoft in general is building some of the largest GB200, GB300 clusters in the world. And, we have an enormous 5-year roadmap that we're investing in quarter after quarter. So I think that's going to continue. Scale does matter, but efficiency matters just as much. And that means selecting the right high quality training data so that every single, flop or GPU iteration is used as efficiently as possible. And that's increasingly the art and craft of training models, is selecting the perfect data and not wasting any of your flops on unnecessary tokens that didn't actually teach your model very much. I think what we're demonstrating here is that we can actually be incredibly efficient and, deliver a really, really impressive performance.
So onto the actual, like, what it feels like to talk to, to use these models. You wrote this really interesting essay a couple weeks ago about, this sort of near conscious or seemingly conscious AI, and you said we need to avoid this. I thought that was really interesting because, like, at Inflection and at Microsoft, you've also talked about making these models really empathetic and sort of have the personalities that people like to talk to. Does that essay represent kind of a shift? Was that maybe the wrong route? Do we need to change direction?
No. So I think the important thing to first accept is that many, many, if not all of the capabilities that we have as humans, both IQ and EQ capabilities, but also AQ capabilities, the actions that we take in the world, and also the SQ, the social intelligence that we all have. These are highly trainable capabilities that the models will eventually acquire. And so that's the default. They learn by imitation, and they have vast amounts of imitation data available to them. And the question that we all have to wrestle with as sculptors, because after all, that's what we are. We're crafting and shaping knowledge, personality attributes, actions, capabilities, and social intelligence. And we have to really answer the question as sculptors, what are the things that we are intending to do, and what are we not intending to do? How do we observe the unintended consequences and try to iterate our way around them in a very responsible way? And so the purpose of my essay is to call attention to the fact that blind imitation of all human capabilities presents material risks. And now is the time for us to proactively think about those risks, which is what I've basically been doing all my career, pushing people to think what is coming around the corner in the next 2 or 3 years, not to run away from them or not to cause a unnecessary panic about them, but to face the fact that it won't just be Microsoft or OpenAI, but there will be hundreds of thousands of developers that have access to these raw capabilities in the open source. And so now's the time for us to be thinking about what it means for these things to show up in our world.
Yeah, and I know you said we're not there yet. It could be years away, but there's been in the news lately, these lawsuits against, OpenAI and Character AI, blaming those chatbots on suicides. And I'm wondering if that's the kind of thing is that a sign of some of these problems that you outline here? Is that what you worry about?
I think that there are going to be all kinds of emergent effects that are hard to predict ahead of time. And I think that the best that we can do is really start to think through what they might be, start sharing them. When they get noticed, be very serious about them in the models, take those examples very seriously, and have all of the developers in the community act on those things quickly. So I think what we've seen in previous generations of technology is where there is a potential for something to be harmful, people have shied away from it, and it's taken too long to get to ground zero. And I think that this time round, we have to be cautious, be proactive, and still move as quickly as possible to build these things and get the very goodness out into the world that they present.
So when you talk to, the MAI one and the voice model as well, are you gonna is it going to feel a certain way? Like, what are you going for? Is it supposed to feel sort of like I'm talking to a nice empathetic person, but sort of like stop short of, actually pretending to be a human? Like, how do these specific models walk that tightrope?
Yeah, I mean, the MAI1 preview model you can think of as more like the raw material that would go into a sculpted personality. So the product, when it comes out in the end, whether in Copilot or similar, will have been shaped significantly for a particular type of personality and a particular rhythm of conversation and so on. And, I think that, you know, other people in the community and open source will be sort of quite aggressive in experimenting with, different versions of these personalities. And I expect there to be many millions of them, just as there are millions of humans and millions of brands and millions of types of organizations. When our species invents or stumbles across a new medium for communication, there ends up being a huge proliferation of flavors, and we should expect that too. Whereas in the last 2 or 3 years in LLM development, there's kind of one personality, right? And there's a few personalities, and maybe there are some developers that let people bring their own and have fancy characters and so on. But among the big developers, it's quite narrow. So I expect that to shift in the next few years, and I think that's kind of what I'm trying to draw attention to with the blog post.
Yeah. So actually, there's not much. It sounds like there's not much you can do in the pre-training. Like, this has to be handled in the post-training.
That's
Sounds
right.
like.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing really you can do in the pre-training. I mean, post-training and even prompting are very, very powerful techniques, and they're actually quite simple, and many people can do them. So we should expect many millions of these different personalities with different backstories and different capabilities. It's going to feel quite different to what we've known in terms of technology and products in the past.
And do you think that when you talk about sculpting, I mean, some people call this almost like farming, like you're growing a model. Do you think you'll need to, in order to really accomplish this in the future, as the models get more capable and bigger, will you need to really try to understand what's going on, like solve the black box problem and get into the individual neurons in order to like achieve this goal?
Maybe. Um, I think it's possible. At the same time, I have a hunch that the obsession with interpretability is a bit of an anthropomorphism. It
Mm.
assumes that in simulating words, which in turn, in generating words, which in turn simulate experiences, sort of implies that there is something of substance underneath those words. And there is not, in my opinion. There is not. It is pretty clear that a simple prediction engine is able to simulate experience and interaction in a very profound way. That does not mean that there is some fundamental experience happening inside the LLM. It means that it's able to imitate almost perfectly the nature of experience. And that's a fundamental difference between imitation and actual experience. Our consciousness as humans is, and other animals, in fact, is predicated on actually experiencing, the sort of sensory input firsthand in real time, storing that, processing it, adapting it, and then generating predictions from it. So, in my view, LLMs are hollow inside, and efforts to really investigate their inner workings is a bit of an anthropomorphism. It's an interesting scientific exploration. It should continue, but it's not likely to sort of reveal some fundamental sort of conscious truth, which I think some academics and other developers have started, sort of inquiring about. And I think that's basically wrong and premature.
But they do get it, even if they're hollow. I mean, they do become more capable as they get larger, it seems, and some of the techniques get better. So as they become more capable, bigger, harder to understand, do you think they at some point become, difficult to control even in post training?
I don't think so. I mean, as I wrote in the blog post, I mean, I don't see any reason why there should be some emergent property of desire or motivation or will arising in these systems. I don't see any reason to believe that that should happen. I think historically those characteristics have emerged because we have a kind of flight or fight instinct and we react to our
Uh,
environment, in order to survive. The beauty of post training is that it's a very tried and tested and very reliable method for shaping specific behaviors. And so I think our responsibility as model developers is to really think very carefully about which behaviors we try to exclude in post training and which we amplify. This isn't going to happen organically or in some emergent way. I mean, it will happen if it does because people deliberately try to engineer these qualities into these systems because they don't have fundamental experience. They're just imitating or simulating high quality conversation. And so the good news is that I think we have a lot of control over these things and we can try and get all the benefits out of them whilst proactively mitigating these risks. And I think that's the goal.
yeah, and one of the things you actually mentioned this in the press release. Hey, come work for us. We're doing some cool stuff. Recruiting talent, it's been a big issue in the AI industry. How's that going for you? I mean, are you able to bring in all the talent that you want at the salary you want?
Absolutely. I mean, we have an incredible team. We bought an enormously strong team from Inflection. We've since hired an incredible group of people from all of the big labs. So, I think we're hiring extremely well. We've been very deliberate and careful not to grow too quick and not to grow too big. You actually need a relatively small group of people to do high quality work here. At the same time, our group is growing to many, many hundreds of people. So, we're in a great spot on hiring.
Yeah. What's the pitch when you bring in, the hot young, PhD student who you're trying to bring in? Why do you say work here and not at OpenAI, not at DeepMind or, you know, um, one of the other
I think the
competitors?
best people in the world want to work on things that really deliver impact, that make a difference, that build beautiful products, but also solve the technical challenges of doing things efficiently. I think what we've demonstrated here is that we can really select very high quality training data to use a relatively modest number of GPUs and build a model which is world class. And that I think is a great calling card for other people that want to come and be part of the team. And I think it's the first of many models that we're going to be putting out over the next few quarters. So I'm looking forward to continuing to build a great group.
One thing I was curious about, I mean, there was some reporting leading up to this announcement about, this model being delayed, having trouble, not getting the capabilities, that you were after early on. What have you learned? I mean, this is obviously the first one, the first fully like end-to-end foundation model at Microsoft. Was it a big challenge, and have you learned a lot?
Yeah, I mean it's always a big challenge, building clusters of this scale and training on this amount of data. It takes a lot of tweaking and iteration, a lot of back and forth, a lot of patience, and a lot of humility. Every lab has battled through multiple releases, and I think we've got a great group of people that are going to continue iterating and putting new great models out in the world. I'm very excited for what's coming down the road because I think we're going to be doing some very interesting things now that we've got our own flywheel spinning.
Yeah. I mean, you would think like, okay, so you were doing this at Inflection. I mean, you were doing, you were at DeepMind obviously before that, but it wasn't at the point yet where everyone was like doing 100,000 GPU clusters. But, you know, does that knowledge like translate, or does every company have sort of like a different set of, sort of a style or set of challenges that you have to kind of learn, once you get there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, fundamentally, this is about building a great culture. It's the culture that attracts the team. It's the team that builds the models. and it's the values of our team that end up being imbued inside of the models and the products that we build. So we're trying to build a very kind, supportive, very sustainable culture that is really focused on technical excellence and just being the very best that we can be. And I think a lot of people find that very, very satisfying, especially when you have the reach that we do, reaching billions of consumers and hundreds of, thousands of large and small businesses across the entire globe. I think it's quite satisfying for people to get that technology into the hands of so many people.
Yeah, and speaking of which, that when do you expect these models to find their way into all of these, to the vast network of Microsoft products?
Yeah, pretty soon. I think we've still got a little bit of iteration to do on the core model, and then obviously a lot of post training to apply them to all the different product areas, make it available so that potentially other people can play with it on the Foundry API. All of that is in motion and coming down the line.
And you said you learned a lot from the open source world, but this is not an open source model. Do you think it would be at some point, it will be at some point, or is that not the direction you'll go?
Could be. Definitely keeping an open mind to that. I mean, there's a lot of good open source models out there. And so I think our first step is to, see how it performs inside of our products, get feedback, iterate, potentially give it to other customers. So we're thinking about all those things right now.
And you mentioned the GB200 cluster. So are you already is MAI 2 coming out? Can we expect it in a year or so, or what's next?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely working on the next model already, and certainly at a larger scale, slightly different tweaks that we're making to the setup. So everything's now in motion, and yeah, plenty more to see over the next few months and years.
I know we're way over time. I really appreciate it. Unless there's anything else you want to add, but I think we covered it. It was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. I appreciate it. Yeah, great to see you and see you in person soon, I hope.
I hope so.